Get everybody.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Hey.
5.
And Grandma.
Alright.
Alright. So the speaker I'm analyzing is Jill Bolt Taylor, and her speech was My Stroke of Insight. And the purpose of this TED Talk is to tell the story of Jill and her history of brain research, where it culminates to her experience with a major stroke and a different outlook into the mind and in life. Jill tells us why she became a brain researcher and information that she has learned about the brain. She then tells us about her experience with a major stroke and how it gave her a different perspective of the brain and how it could help society. The use of appeals is provide specific examples and assess their effectiveness and provide suggestions if necessary. For the logical, Jill uses the facts and information that she has learned about the brain as a way to build up her story and about her stroke. As she teaches us about the brain, we are immediately told about the situation of the major stroke that she went through and how it affected her life. I find it interesting that she goes through what each side of the brain does and functions, then tells us of what her left side of her brain that was injured during the stroke. She figures out herself during the process of her morning ritual as her left brain is turning on and off that she has had a stroke. We are forewarned of what might happen to us with a stroke to the left side. Our left hemisphere thinks linearly and methodically. Our left hemisphere is all about the past, and it's all about the future. Our left hemisphere is designed to take that enormous collage of the present moments and start picking out details, and more details about those details. It then categorizes and organizes all the information. With her teaching us about the brain at the beginning of her lecture, it prepares us for what her brain is experiencing with the stroke that occurs. Emotional is that although not everybody has had the experience in life to include growing up with a brother diagnosed with schizophrenia and having a stroke, she uses it as a way to tug at the heartstrings of the audience. I believe that everyone at one time or another has had the experience of taking care of someone sick, either physically or emotionally. Because of Jill's brother's diagnosis of schizophrenia, she had the desire to learn more about the brain and how her brother's brain works the way it does. She had a hemorrhagic stroke, which took her 8 years to rehabilitate from the damage that this caused. You can feel the emotions by her sharing her experiences of the stroke and how it impacted her life. The credibility is that although we aren't shown Jill's credentials, her insight on the brain and its functions provide enough evidence that if she isn't a brain researcher, then at least she knows a lot about the brain. As a shock factor and as a way to teach the audience about the way the brain functions, she has an assistant bring out a real human brain to show that the brain is in two separate halves. She explains that they only share communication through the axonal fibers, but that both sides of the brain think differently and would describe them as having two different personalities. In organization, I do think overall that Jill's organization is good. However, her thesis is at the end of her story. This could have been intentional, as she didn't want us to know the point of her story as to why it was important. She does go through a story from beginning to end by first telling us the reason why she became a brain researcher, informing us on basic knowledge about the brain that we may or may not have known, and then telling us about her major stroke through a brain researcher's perspective. Her delivery of the speech was very good, not a lot of pauses except when she was taking and putting back the human brain that she had with her assistant. Although you could argue that these pauses with the brain could have been there for comedic effect, she takes us through common knowledge of the brain that we probably would never have known unless working in the medical field or being a scientist. She also provides examples of what would happen to the side of the brain if a stroke occurred. She did this in a way so that we could understand what she was experiencing while the stroke was occurring. The overall effectiveness is that her emotions created a strong impact on the audience with us. Always remember the brain she brought out to teach us about each side of the brain, how the stroke affected her brain, and what she had to go through in the rehabilitation process to recover from the stroke. Could you please get everybody again?
Hey.
Okay.
Alright.